White Sargasso Sea, Rhys. I woke in the dark after dreaming that I was buried alive, and when I was awake, the feeling of suffocation persisted. Something was lying across my mouth, hair, with a sweet heavy smell. And I threw it off, but still it could not breathe. I could not breathe. I shut my eyes and lay without moving for a few seconds. When I opened them, I saw the candles burn down on that abominable dressing table. Then I knew where I was. The door onto the veranda was open, and the breeze was so cold that I knew it must be very early in the morning. Before dawn, I was cold too, deathly cold and sick and in pain. I got out. I got out of the bed without looking at her, staggered into my dressing room and saw myself in the glass. I turned away at once. I could not vomit. I only retched painfully. I thought I have been poisoned, but it was a dull thought, like a child spelling out of the letters of a word which he cannot read, and which if he could would have no meaning or context. I was too giddy to stand and fell backwards onto the bed, looking at the blanket, which was a peculiar shade of yellow. After looking at it for some time, I was able to go over to the window and vomit. It seemed like hours before this stopped. I would lean up against the wall and wipe my face. Then the stretching, the retching and sickness would start again. When it was over, I lay on the bed, too weak to move. I have never made a greater effort in my life than I made then. I longed to lie there and sleep, but forced myself up. I was weak and giddy, but no longer sick or in pain. I put on my dressing gown and splashed water on my face. Then I opened the door into her room. The cold light was on her, and I looked at the set drop of her lips, the frown between her thick eyebrows, deep as if it had been cut with a knife. And as I looked, she moved and flung her arm out. I thought coldly, yes, very beautiful. The chin, the thin wrist, the sweet swell of the forearm, the rounded elbow, the curve of her shoulder into her upper arm, all present, all correct. As I watched, hating, her face grew smooth and very young again. She even seemed to smile, a trick of the light perhaps. What else? She may wake at any moment. I told myself, I must be quick. Her torn shift was on the floor. I drew the sheet over her gently, as if I covered a dead girl. I drew the sheet over her gently, as if I covered a dead girl. One of the glasses was empty. She had drained hers. There was some wine left in the other, which was on the dressing table. I dipped my finger into it and tasted it. It was bitter. I didn't look at her again, but holding the glass went on to the veranda. Hilda was on there with a broom in her hand. I put my finger to my lips, and she looked at me with huge eyes, then imitated me, putting her own fingers to her lips. As soon as I had dressed and got out of the house, I began to run. I do not remember that day clearly, where I ran or how I fell, or wept or lay exhausted, but I found myself at last near the ruined house and the wild orange tree. Here with my head in my arms, I must have slept, and when I woke, it was getting late and the wind was chilly. I got up and found my way back to the path which led to the house. I knew how to avoid every creeper, and I never stumbled once. I went to my dressing room if I passed anyone, I did not see them, and if they spoke, I did not hear them. There was a tray on the table with a jug of water, a glass, and some brown fish cakes. I drank my I drank almost all the river. I drank almost all the water, for I was very thirsty. But I did not touch the food. I sat on the bed waiting, for I knew that Emily would come, and I knew what she would say. I'm sorry for you. She came soundlessly on bare feet. I gave you something to eat, she said. She brought cold chicken, bread, fruit, and bottle of wine, and I drank a glass without speaking, then another. She cut some of the food up and sat beside me and fed me as if I were a child. Her arm behind my hand was warm, but the outside, when I touched it, was cool, almost cold. I looked into her lovely meaningless face, sat up and pushed the plate away. Then she said, "I'm sorry for you. You've told me so before, Emily. Is that the only son you know?" There was a spark of gaiety in her There was a spark of gaiety in her, yes, but when I laughed, she put her hand over my mouth and apprehensively, and I pulled her down beside me, and we were both laughing. That is what I remember most about my. That is what I remember most about that encounter. She was so gay, so natural, and something of this gaiety she must have given to me. For I had not one moment from remorse, nor was I anxious to know what was happening behind the thin partition which divided us from my wife's bedroom. In the morning, of course, I felt differently. Another complication, impossible, and her skin was darker, her lips thicker than I had thought. She was sleeping very soundly and quietly, but there was awareness in her eyes when she opened them, and after a moment suppressed laughter, I felt satisfied and peaceful, but not gay as she did. No, by God, not gay. I had no wish to touch her, and she knew it, for she got up at once and began to dress. A very graceful dress, I said, and she showed me the many ways it would be worn. It could be worn, trailing on the floor, lifted to show a lace of petticoat, or for hitched up far above the knee. I told her that I was leaving the island soon, but that before I left, I wanted to give her a present. It was a large present, but she took it with no thanks and no expression on her face. When I asked her what she meant to do, she said, "It's a long time I know what I want to do, and I know I don't get it here." "You're so beautiful enough to get anything you want," I said. "Yes," she agreed simply, "but not here." She wanted, it seemed, to join her sister, who was a dressmaker in Demerara, but she would not say but she would not stay in Demerara, she said. She wanted to go to Rio, or whatever it is. There were rich men in Rio, and when will you start all this? I said, assumed. I start now. She would catch one of the fishing boats and and get into town. Massacre and get into town. I laughed and teased her. She was running away from the old woman, Christophine, I said. She was unsmiling when she answered, I have malice to no one, but I don't stay here. I asked her how she would get to massacre. I don't I don't want no horse or mole, she said. My legs strong enough to carry me. As she was going, I could not resist anything. I as she was going, I could not resist saying, half longing, half triumphant, "Well, Emily, are you still sorry for me?" "Yes," she said. "I am sorry for you, but I find it in my heart to be sorry for her too." She shut the door gently. I lay and listened for the sound I knew I should hear, the horse hoofs, as my wife left the house. I turned over and slept till Baptist woke me with coffee. His face was gloomy. "The cook is leaving," he announced. "Why?" He shrugged his shoulders and spread his hands open. I got up, looked out of the window and saw her straight out of the kitchen. A strapping woman. She couldn't speak English, or said she couldn't. I forgot this when I said, "I must talk to her." What is the huge bundle on her head? Her mattress said, mattress said Baptist. She will come back for the rest. No good to talk to her. She won't stay in the house. I left. "Are you leaving too?" "No," said Baptist. "I'm overseer here." I noticed that he did not call me sir or master. And the little girl Hilda? Hilda would do as I taught. Hilda was Hilda will do as I tell her. Hilda will stay. Capital, I said. "Then why are you looking so anxious? Your mistress will be back soon." He shrugged again and muttered, but whether he was talking about my morals or the extra work she the extra work he would have to do, I couldn't tell, for he muttered impatience. I told him to sling one of the veranda hammocks under the cedar trees, and there I spent the rest of that day. Baptist provided meals, but he seldom smiled and never spoke except to answer a question. My wife did not return, yet I was not lonely or unhappy. Sun, sleep, and the cool water of the river were not enough. I wrote a cautious letter to Mr. Fraser on the third day. I told him that I was considering a book about Obeg and Obeg and had remembered his story of the case he had come across. Had he any idea of the whereabouts of the woman now? Was she still in Jamaica? This letter was sent down by the twice-weekly messenger, and he must have answered at once, for I had his reply in a few days. "I have often thought of your wife and yourself, and was on the point of writing to you. Indeed, I have not forgotten the case. The woman in question was called Josephine or Christophine Tobias, or some such name, and she had been one of the Causeway servants. After she came out of the jail, she disappeared, but it was common knowledge that old Mr. Mason befriended her. I heard that she owned or was giving a small house and a piece of land near Grambus. She is intelligent in her way, but can express herself well, but I did not like the look of her at all. And consider her most dangerous person. My wife insisted that she had gone back to Martinique, her native island, and was very upset that I had mentioned the matter even in such a roundabout fashion. I happen to know now that she has not returned to Martinique. So I have written very discreetly to Hill, the white inspector of police in your town. If she lives near you and gets up to any of her nonsense, let him know at once. He'll send a couple of policemen up to your place, and she won't get off lightly this time. I'll make sure of that. So much for you, Josephine, or Christophine, I thought. So much for you, Fina. Alright, I guess that's for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow then.